In our previous dossiers, we deconstructed the extreme lengths Corvids will go to protect their intelligence. We explored their architectural black sites, their biometric facial recognition networks, and the brutal internal interrogations they use to root out traitors in their own families. They do all of this to protect one thing, their intellectual property. But no defense is perfect. No black site is impenetrable. And sometimes, the spies win. When a human tech conglomerate gets hacked, they lose millions of dollars. When a Corvid inventor gets hacked, they lose a biological patent, and the entire canopy economy shifts. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how rival Corvid cartels execute coordinated operations to steal physical prototypes, how they reverse engineer the geometry of complex tools, and how a single piece of stolen technology going open source can trigger a massive, localized industrial revolution inside the forest canopy. Before you can understand the theft, you have to understand the product. In the tech world, the ultimate competitive advantage is proprietary hardware. For the Crows of New Caledonia, their proprietary hardware is the stepped-cut pandanus leaf tool. This is not a stick they found on the ground. This is a multi-stage, manufactured piece of technology. And creating it demands a level of cognitive architecture that took researchers decades to fully appreciate. The New Caledonian crow begins its manufacturing process with a very specific choice. It does not grab any leaf. It locates a pandanus plant and selects a particular section of the leaf with the right width, the right thickness, and the right natural edge structure. This selection process alone is a form of quality control. The bird is evaluating raw materials before production even starts. Once the crow has identified the correct section, it begins cutting. Using its beak as a precision blade, it bites into the leaf edge at a measured angle and tears downward in a controlled motion, creating a stepped profile. Each step creates a natural barb, a small serrated hook pointing backward along the tool. The crow does not make a single cut. It makes multiple cuts in sequence, each one lower and slightly inward from the last, producing a tapered shape where the tip is narrow enough to fit into a deep, narrow larval tunnel, and the barbs angle backward so that when the tool is pushed forward and twisted, the grub at the end gets physically snagged and pulled out. This is not random. The finished tool has a geometry that is genuinely functional, and the bird manufactured it from raw plant material, using a multi-step process it had to learn. That last point is where the real story begins. This behavior is not genetic. A New Caledonian crow raised in isolation, away from any adult birds, does not spontaneously produce a stepped-cut pandanus tool. The skill must be culturally transmitted. Younger crows watch older crows manufacture and use the tool over extended periods. And gradually, through observation and repeated practice, they learn to replicate the process. This means the pandanus tool is not an instinct. It is a cultural technology, a learned craft that gets passed down through generations. The caloric reward for this technology is enormous. The primary target extracted using this tool is the cerambicid beetle larva, a fat, protein-dense grub that lives deep inside rotting wood and pandanus STMs. These grubs are high-calorie, high-fat food sources that are completely inaccessible without a precisely shaped extraction tool. A crow using a basic twig gets nothing from these tunnels. The tunnel curves, the grub retreats further, and the straight stick cannot follow or grab. The stepped-cut pandanus tool solves every one of these engineering problems simultaneously. The flock that controls this manufacturing knowledge controls access to one of the richest caloric resources in the forest. This is the biological patent. The flock that can produce this tool consistently has a massive, compounding advantage over every rival group working with inferior equipment. They eat better, they survive longer, their juveniles develop faster, and because the skill is cultural and not genetic, it can be guarded. You can restrict access to it the same way a corporation restricts access to a proprietary manufacturing process. You can keep it inside your group and let your rivals starve. The flock that controls this patent controls the calories. They are the apex tech conglomerate of the 4EST, but you cannot keep a patent secret forever when your competitors are constantly running surveillance. If a rival flock wants to break the monopoly, they have two options: spend years trying to independently invent the technology, or steal the prototype. In biology, the act of stealing food from another animal is called kleptoparasitism. But crows have evolved a highly specific, much more dangerous variant of this behavior: intellectual property theft. They do not just steal the food, they steal the mechanism used to acquire the food. The operational playbook for Corvid tool theft begins with a phase that intelligence analysts would immediately recognize: prolonged surveillance. A crow from a rival group positions itself at a higher elevation in the canopy with a direct line of sight to the target. It does not make aggressive moves. It does not announce itself. It waits and it watches. The spy crow is not watching for food. It is watching the tool. It tracks every motion the innovator crow makes: the grip, the insertion angle, the retrieval twist. This is observational intelligence gathering at its most refined, and it can continue for an extended period without the innovator noticing anything is wrong. The extraction of the physical prototype requires precise timing. The innovator crow faces a specific operational vulnerability every single time it successfully extracts a grub. To eat the grub, it must release the tool. For a brief window measured in seconds, the pandanus tool sits unattended on a branch or wedged in bark. The spy crow has been waiting for exactly this moment. The swoop is fast and direct. The spy does not hesitate over the grub. It goes directly for the tool, grabs it, and is gone before the innovator can respond. What just got stolen is not a meal. What just got stolen is a fully manufactured piece of precision hardware that took skill and time to produce. The spy is not thinking in terms of today's calories. Carrying the extracted grub would give it one meal. Carrying the pandanus tool gives it the architecture of an entire extraction system. The long-term exponential value of the hardware completely outweighs the short-term value of the food sitting right next to it. That is not basic animal behavior. That is strategic thinking about future resource acquisition, and it is exactly what makes Corvid tool theft categorically different from standard food theft. Stealing the physical tool gives the spy a temporary advantage, but eventually the leaf degrades, the edge is dull, and it breaks. If the spy wants to permanently disrupt the tech monopoly, they have to do what every tech conglomerate fears most: reverse engineering. When a human tech company gets their hands on a competitor's new microchip, they do not just plug it in, they tear it apart. They map the architecture, analyze the geometry, and figure out how to manufacture it themselves. When a spy crow returns to its flock with a stolen pandanus tool, it does not just use it until it breaks, it studies it. The crow will hold the stolen prototype in its feet and physically examine it from multiple angles, tapping the edges with its beak, testing the flex of the blade, running the serrated edge against a surface. It is performing a structural analysis of the tool's geometry, and then the terrifying leap in cognition occurs. The spy will find a raw pandanus leaf and attempt to replicate what it just examined. It reverse engineers the biological patent. This is where the concept of cultural transmission becomes one of the most alarming capabilities in the entire animal kingdom. Cultural transmission in corvids is not passive. It does not require a patient teacher spending hours with a student. It can occur through simple observation. A juvenile crow that watches the spy crow using the newly replicated pandanus tool will begin to absorb the behavioral template for how the tool is supposed to function. It may not immediately understand how to manufacture it, but it understands what the finished product looks like in action, and it stores that reference. Over a surprisingly short period, within a single generation of birds, the replication spreads through the group. Different individuals attempt their own versions of the manufacturing process. Some fail and produce tools that do not grip the grubs effectively. Others, through trial and repeated attempts, converge on the correct geometry. The ones with the working tools eat more. The juveniles watching the successful individuals learn faster. Within that same generation, the formerly proprietary technology has propagated across an entire rival flock. This is a localized biological industrial revolution, a technology that took the original inventor flock potentially generations of cultural refinement to develop can spread to a completely separate group in a fraction of that time, because reverse engineering collapses the development timeline dramatically. The rival flock does not have to rediscover every failed prototype. They start from the finished product and work backward, and that is a catastrophic acceleration of technological adoption. The formerly exclusive caloric advantage is gone. The original inventor flock has lost its monopoly, and now the entire forest enters a new economic phase. The theft is complete. The technology has gone open source. The rival flock is now experiencing an unprecedented caloric boom. But in nature, just like in global economics, rapid technological disruption has a devastating cost. When an entire forest region suddenly gains access to highly advanced extraction tools, the local ecosystem cannot handle the efficiency. The inventor flock, which previously held the monopoly and extracted cerambycid grubs at a controlled rate tied to their single group's caloric needs, now shares that extraction pressure with a fully armed rival group operating at the same level of efficiency. The total extraction rate from the available larval population doubles almost immediately. The grub population cannot reproduce fast enough to compensate. Cerambycid larvae require significant time to mature inside their host wood. The extraction rate enabled by the pandanus tool is faster than the natural replenishment rate of the prey population. When only one flock had the tool, that imbalance was manageable within a defined territory. When two flocks operate the same technology across the same territory, the larval population collapses. This forces a set of behavioral responses, each one more aggressive than the last. The first response is territorial. Crows that previously tolerated the presence of rivals at a distance now treat every inch of productive foraging ground as worth defending. Confrontations increase. Energy that was previously spent on foraging and tool manufacture now gets redirected into territorial aggression, which itself burns calories at a rate that worsens the food shortage. The second response is dispersal. When territorial defense fails to secure enough food, individual birds and eventually entire subgroups begin moving. They push into adjacent territories, encountering other flocks who have not experienced the tool boom, and the technology spreads further outward. The original localized industrial revolution becomes a regional cascade, each wave of spread triggering another round of resource depletion and displacement in the next territory. The broader ecosystem registers this disruption well beyond the crows. The cerambycid beetles, whose larvae are being extracted at unsustainable rates, are themselves decomposers, organisms whose tunneling through dead wood accelerates the breakdown of organic material and the recycling of nutrients back into the forest soil. A population collapse in the larval beetle population slows decomposition rates. Dead wood accumulates, soil nutrient cycling changes. Plant communities that depend on those nutrients begin to feel the downstream pressure. A single stolen prototype, over enough time and enough replication events, can alter the chemistry of a forest floor. A single stolen prototype does not just give one bird a meal. It destabilizes the entire regional ecosystem. The theft and replication of biological patents proves that corvids operate within a highly volatile, highly advanced canopy economy. They understand the value of technology, and they understand the devastating power of a monopoly. But if toolmaking is cultural, and technology can be stolen and spread, it means the forest is not a single unified ecosystem. It is divided into literal tech hubs. Why are the crows in one patch of forest living in the Stone Age, while crows just 3 miles away are living in an industrial revolution? And more importantly, what happens when nomadic crows act as biological merchants, carrying stolen technology along invisible trade routes between flocks? To see how crows have mapped out literal biological Silicon Valleys, click the video on your screen right now. We are mapping the trade routes. I'll see you in there.